Good afternoon, it's Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And this episode is one of those timeless teachings. And the topic is of Chiron being co-present with Rahu, with current eclipses, or with transiting outer planets to your sign. So let's say you have Chiron in Aries, like in this chart, then having Rahu in Aries, which we are about to have natally, or through eclipses, which can also apply to Ketu if it's eclipses, or having an outer planet transiting the Aries, let's say we have Neptune coming forward to Aries. What would that be like for a person? So this episode begins with the ascendant ruled by Jupiter that is in Taurus. It's a Saturn day and a Venus hour. So Jupiter is in Venus sign. Venus is in the 9th whole sign house, in Leo, co-present with Mars and Lilith. She is sextiling Mercury, which is on the descendant and the ruler of the next hour, on Aldebaran, squaring Saturn. And she is trining a lot of fortune in 11 degrees Sagittarius, so Sagittarius rising, 17 degrees. Moon is on the descendant, and Moon is in Gemini, which is interesting because I have Chiron in Gemini, co-present with Rahu, and this is a part of what my talk is about. And we're really approaching the new moon. So this is, and of course the moon is separating from a sextile to Chiron. So of course I will be talking about this, right? Without further ado, what is Chiron? Okay, so Chiron, you see the glyph over here. Let's enlarge it so that you can see this is the glyph. Chiron is of the archetype of the wounded healer. It's basically an archetype that was punished with a certain, they were basically punished with eternal life, but they are suffering through this life, both because they see all of their loved one die, and in addition to that, they have a wound. They can tend to the wounds of others. They are healers, but they cannot heal their own wound. So while in many streams of astrology, Chiron was considered the wound that you cannot heal, recent evolutionary astrology understands that Chiron basically goes through a return at the age of 50, because it takes 50 years to surround the zodiac, and therefore we can get the feeling that there's something that just does not heal. But at around the age of 50, we do get a chance to unravel and receive a tremendous healing to our Chiron wound when we get the doors open up for that. Of course, you can have a Chiron return with Sadasati. You can have your Chiron aspected badly. There are many things that can happen around that. But particularly where Chiron is in your chart, it's an ongoing process of tending to things and unraveling more and more. But there is also a wound there that sometimes just needs to be allowed to heal in itself, and understand that no matter how much you poke at that wound, it's not like it, unless it's your Chiron return, which happens at around the age of 50 and then at the age of 100. It's something that you live with. It's something that you live in the vicinity of, you can work with, you can tend to, you can do magic around, and depending on where your Chiron at, you can work with the planet that rules Chiron. So let's say now Chiron is in Mars. Well, Mars is a malefic, but if you are a more trained magician, astrological magician, perhaps you can work with Mars on your Chiron issues if you have Chiron in Aries. But the essence of Chiron is that the doors open up at 50 to get tremendous progress. You will get tiny progresses as things unfold. But it's the kind of thing that you can think, well, I've been through this, and it returns again, and there's another layer and another layer and another layer. So this episode is dedicated not just to Chiron itself. You can go around. Recently, I just saw a video by, I haven't begun to watch it, but by Heather Ilan that did Chiron. She had an interview with another astrologer. Tom Jacobs had great works of Chiron. So those are at least two sources that you can tend to. And working with the Chironic wound, we're understanding Chiron, wonderful teachings around that. It's not repeating that. What I focus on is what happens unless you're 50 or 100, what happens when a major event triggers your Chiron? So those things can be having natal Rahu, for example, with Chiron. Rahu is basically where your soul hasn't been yet. Okay? Keto is where you came from, where you lean back to, and where you usually, like, you mastered it and now you're helping others. Okay? Rahu, you haven't been there yet. So you need to care for yourself now, because you need to learn how to do this. You can't really teach others how to do this just yet. Okay? So at around our 40s, this is 40, 42, Rahu matures. So Rahu matures at 42, and that means that at around your 40, you're getting a push towards delving into a new land. Every time Rahu is triggered or triggered by eclipses, you will get that push. Okay, let's say Rahu is in Aries. Rahu is in Taurus. Recently we had Rahu in Gemini. You definitely got, like, your houses of Cancer and Gemini, and to a lesser degree even Leo and Aries, were already tended to or getting a call, more emphasis of this hemisphere when Rahu was in Gemini. Okay, it was still evident, but at around age 42, you're being pushed forward. Okay, I can say I'm not 42 just yet, I'm 39, but I can say when I have Chiron in the 4th house in Gemini and the ruler in the 2nd, so this is housing. One of the things in the signification is housing or having a family of my own. Because there is Chiron there, okay, I remembered that my parents said, at least my daughter will have a house. And we had to sell this house because it was not safe for two women to live. Okay, our parents are separated, so it was not safe for two women to live. Even two people who appear as women, both a woman and a man, but even worse, huh? So the places where it was safe, or the places where there was employment, or the places where I could get a chance to do my career, which was more the city. And all these things led to a situation where that statement that at least my daughter will have a house ended up with me not having a house, and eventually, and the engine for aspiring for a house was not rolling. So usually, Rahu, you have an engine rolling. Your soul wants to go somewhere. Okay? This means that my soul, my person, has never owned a house or land before. here they were tending to other things, which is funny because I was doing career. Okay, it means that Ketu is in the 10th house, so I was a known figure, but I never had my own family. It can be that I was a teacher or a guru, but I did not have a family. Maybe I was a priest, and I did not have a family. And the priest, they live in a monk. In the monastery, the monk he lives in a monastery. So priests, they have the housing from the monastery. They don't, And when I visited monasteries, Christian monasteries, I had a strange feeling. There was something that was pulling me back, but I knew I had to move away from. So it is not impossible that I was a priest or a monk living in a monastery or a guru, and I was supported by the people, and I never owned an estate and I never owned land. But when I had Chiron, then I just didn't think that this was possible. Okay? The engine was not rolling. And so when I had Rahu return in the eclipse, the last eclipse in Gemini that was on my Chiron, when Neptune squared that and the moon was transiting over that Chiron, Neptune squared that on that day, I had like I'm homeless. I was like, oh look, I can delineate that. But the fact is, the engine to get the house was not rolling. I didn't believe. I was like, either you get a house, either you have a house or you don't feel safe in this place where you're living in, or you have problems with the neighbors, or you have to sell the house for some reason, or you can't pay property tax. It's like I was so much aware of all the problems and all the traumas because I was born into a family where you had a house and you were sure that your children will have this house, and eventually it was not possible. And the working market, and it's like you wanted to preserve the sanity and the sovereignty over your body, and therefore you had to sell a house. So the engine was so not rolling that I was eventually in 2021, 2022, I was homeless. And then instead of thinking of terminating my life, I decided to I was channeling, so I was spiritually guided to choose the carpets, choose the floors, choose the doors. Every time they would threaten the shelter would close, I would go to another house, like one of these stores that sells housing stuff, and decide this is how the garden would look like, this is how the pool would look like, this is how the jacuzzi would look like, and start thinking in this way. Okay, because it was spiritually correct to change my thinking. It took only the fact that it was spiritually correct to do so and to make a home out of every place. So out of the shelter I lived at, I had the keychain of this Dutch house and some incense of frankincense. This was my fatherland. I was given a gift of frankincense, incense that I was lighting up. So it was given a bit of a home feeling. I was manifesting a home, and then I was channeling for people to do the same to people around, and then some people got help. They did the same, and then they got help, and then they got housing. I was like, everybody's get housing, I don't get anything. I'm still living in rent. But the thing is, I do remember myself as a child imagining homes. I really like wooden homes. I liked wooden homes. They give this warm feeling. And then I learned that there are, notice the Chiron work, I learned that there can be worms, okay, that eat the wood, or it's difficult to maintain the wood. So it's not practical to dream of a wooden home. Okay, and so I really liked being in houses, and also when my parents we were going door to door because we were merchants. So We're going to door, so we've been in houses, we've talked to people. It was fascinating life. But to own an estate seemed too big. My soul has never been there before. I imagined houses, I imagined cozy feeling. I longed for it, but the engine was so not rolling that unfortunately, only when I was having no house, the engine started rolling, like, and I was beginning to channel the forces and people that were like teaching me of real estate, teaching me of this, teaching me of that, even to the point when I was had no place to sleep. So I said to the police, I didn't ask for shelter. I said, I'm not asking for you for shelter. Make the street safe. If the street is not safe, that any child can go at any hour of the day and it is safe, it's not good real estate. Then I could not live there. Okay? That. So, taking it back to the topic, now let's go from this personalized story, okay, the co-presence of Chiron and Rahu in the fourth house, with ruler in the second and Mercury, and generalize this story. If we want to generalize the story, then first I would generalize the story by saying co-presence of Chiron and Rahu. Rahu would mean that anytime it's triggered by eclipses, that is both when you are 18 years old, when you are 9 years old, then you have the nodal reversal, then 18 years old, and then 36 years old, nodal return. It means that you are being called to tend to it. Whatever this is for you, okay, 6th house, 7th house, 4th house, 10th house, you're called to tend to it. And then, having Chiron there, no matter what you do, you can only go so far. There's only so much that you can do about a topic. And it kind of almost seems like the best of efforts are not anywhere near enough. Okay, even right now, I live in rent. I live in literally the best location in my village. It's the house of the makler. It's the house of the real estate agent. That being said, I do not own the land. I do not own the house, and I'm 39. Okay, and I worked so hard. Okay, I was doing so much work spiritually, physically, learning about it. Like there's so many things. All the while I was in tremendous trauma, but there are still things to tend to. I'm only now learning to tend to both spiritually tend to and physically tend to this issue. Okay, and that means that for you, even when you have Rahu present, even when eclipses come and trigger this house, there still is more work to do. There still is more to do around this topic. There is still this wound around the topic where Rahu is. And let's say Rahu is in the 7th house, relationships. Okay? And Chiron is in relationships and with Rahu. And so you will have eclipses with Rahu, nodal return. And you will have eclipses in your 7th house with Rahu in your 7th house. Because you have Chiron there. Because usually eclipse with Rahu in your 7th house, you can get into a relationship, you could get married. But because Chiron is there, then you can see it can be, you learn tremendously about relationships, but you haven't gotten into one. It's not a bad thing. Because Chiron matures at 50. Okay? Or you got into a relationship, but there was some issues going on with this relationship, and you're like, I've made so much effort, I learned so much about myself, I've grown, I've changed, I've sacrificed, I've given, I've done so much work, and still this relationship does not yield. It's not what I was hoping for. Relationships are just like that? And you have Chiron in the 7th house at around the age 50. You could be one of these people that get married in their 50s. Or like, just like if you have just Rahu, you could be like people who get married in their 40s and have sometimes very happy marriage. Lada Duncheva openly talks about, and she has a relationship seminar. She's reselling her relationship seminar, which, like, I believe if you have the chance to take it, then take this. She's a great astrologer, and she was married 3 times. Okay, 2 times she was having she called it karmic knots. So it was relationships that were getting her to the next, and it was karmic. Okay, so I can tell you deal with that. But because she had Rahu in the 7th house, then around her 40s, if I'm not mistaken, she married the 3rd time. Very blessed marriage. Okay, of course, it was in her chart that the 3rd marriage will be, and she got the reading by deceased Nicholas Stojanovic, and he told her, you'll marry 2 times. And she was married. He said, you will leave your husband, and then you will get married again, and this marriage will be successful. Because he had no, like, Nicholas Stojanovic, he was Slavic, he had no filter. What he said, what he thought, he said. There was no, it's a very traditional type of reading. You don't mess around. It's like, yeah, you will get good marriage. You don't need to marry. It's not good for you. that was the type of reading. Not modern astrology, not fit for everyone. He's deceased now, so you won't get a reading from Stojanovic now, unless you channel. So the thing is, if you get Chiron, then Chiron matures at 50. Okay, so let's say you have Chiron in the 10th house. You don't know, you are 45 years old. Rahu has matured, and you are called to do things. You will have this exciting new career, this exciting new business. If it's connected to the 3rd or the 2nd, this exciting new position in life, or you would change your outlook. So you would, the way your image, okay, the way you appear publicly, but it doesn't yield. There's just something there, and that noise. There's something that's not ready, is not maturing up for the door to open up for you to have the tremendous healing. And that tremendous healing, yes, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't cry, doesn't mean that that the wound will not show up again, but eventually you do heal. There are great stories of people who healed during their the year 50. Okay, again, it can happen. You can be 50 and have Chiron returned, but Sadasati, Chiron returned, but some other transit that makes it difficult. So you will have mixed things. Okay, and that is something that I've seen in the lives of people. It's one of those things where, to give an example, I gave on another video, but perhaps it's not so good. I don't know. Perhaps it's not, because Chiron is the wound, such a deep thing. So, at around age 50, think of people that you know in their 50, the year 50. Okay, not 51, not 52, 50. You will see a tremendous improvement in the life of people, at least in one topic where Chiron was. It can be mixed with all kinds of effects. It depends on what's happening. Another thing that can trigger where Chiron is, but you would still not get this resolution, is if you are before 50 or between 50 and 100, then you can have an outer planet go into the sign where Rahu is, where Chiron is. Okay, I will have it with Uranus. Uranus is about to go. I said nice and yeah, but Uranus is about to go into Gemini in 2025, 2026. Okay, 2025, 2026. I'm 39 now. I will be 41, 42. So it will be together with my Rahu maturation, and I will feel tremendous energy moving forward. Revolutionary activism, but it's only at 50 that the certain door will open up. Okay, so you could have Pluto. If you have Chiron in Aquarius, you would have Pluto going over. So not going to go into Chiron generations now, but that means, let's say I had Chiron in Capricorn. That means that since 2008, And let's say you were 20 to 2000, like, oh, I don't remember when was Chiron in, yeah. But since 2008, you have had a tremendous transformation and growth. But that Chiron wound still is, because you're not 50, or because you're not 100, not 51, not 49, 50 or 100. Okay. What it means essentially is that relative to this Chiron wound, you will need to accept that at this time there is something that whenever this Chiron is triggered, when the moon crosses over your Chiron, you know the days when it happens. When the moon conjuncts your Chiron, know the day when it happens, because you can understand that this stems from this, and you do not the all of the world is over. It will change in a day or two. You understand that there is a wound that you live in beside too. You're tending to it, but it's not resolved yet. There will be tremendous healing at around 50. It doesn't mean that everything will, like, it doesn't mean that ever, like, I don't know what will happen, what transits you have at 50. So you need to understand. Okay, I could be having a Chiron return at around Sadisati, because I have moon in Cancer. So at around 50, yes, at around 50. If I'll be 42 with Rahu maturation. No, Sadhisatis, I have time for Sadhisati. But, you know, you can have one of these things. So, no, fortunately, no. Or maybe yes, I don't know. Or I think it comes with Saturn. Never mind. That's. But the point is, all the types of teachings that tell you that there is something there and you are befriending it. And there is a friend. This friend can be called grief, and this friend can be called vulnerability, and this friend can be called little me, and this friend needs tending to, and they're not getting up from bed today. There's nothing you can do to make them get out of bed today, because the moon is crossing this Chiron, and you can't get out of bed today. I don't care if you're the CEO of the nation. If you're the president, you can't get out of bed today. Okay. And it can be quite frustrating to have significant amount of charge to the house where Chiron is when you are not 50 and not 100, because you will have growth, you will have evolution, you will have a lot. Okay? And there will still be this wound. That would still exist. Okay, when I was going back to the concrete place, when I was in between houses or homeless, I've talked to people. I've talked to a lady, and she lived in a big house. Her husband liked warm temperature, and she could not sleep. She was not getting sleep at her own home because of her husband. She got no sleep. She had this big house, big yard, very nice lady, and she was not sleeping at her own home. Okay. I saw a lady at the bus the other day, an old lady. She has a mansion. She said they built this house for 7 years. In Israel, it does take 7 years until you can even begin to build. They built this house for 7 years. She's so connected to this house. She says, I'm an old lady. I wouldn't like to bring anybody in. But my children, they're in America, they're here, they're there. Here, not in Israel. And It's very difficult to sustain the house. Now it's a mansion. She has to clean a mansion, but she's so emotionally tied to this apartment that she can't let go. It's very difficult. She said, if I had 2 rooms, I don't need much at my age, would be easier to sustain, okay, the house. A very nice lady. Saw her probably, I don't know if it was a Friday or a Wednesday, and she was wearing green. Okay. And so there's this Rahu that wants to do something, and on the one hand, if you don't do what the outer planet or what Rahu wants you to do, that is, let's say it's a house, get a house, relationship, you move forward with trying to get a relationship, there can be crisis. For me, I was homeless. Okay, homeless in the street, homeless, and then looking at the phone, it's like Neptune, the moon making a square where the nose was like, because of this transit, it's because of this transit. I felt, satisfied with myself that I delineated my homelessness. That what was I to do? And I asked my channeling, is it like a fated thing? Is it like, yes, but the best way is to see it so. Because the engines that were driving towards get a house, build for a house, that was getting a couple of this, they were not rolling because there was such tremendous trauma tended to. Now, the more you tend to things, or when you at least say, I tend to something, you say, I'm not blocking this away. There's this thing I'm afraid of, there's this thing I'm afraid of, there's this thing I'm afraid of. I'm not forgetting about this, I tend to this, I invite solutions. Okay? Now, you have more thing to work. This is alleviating your path. It's easing up certain things. So I'm not forgetting about this, I'm tending to this, or feeling, I feel hopeless in regards to this. I feel hopeless. I feel tremendously, in tremendous despair. I feel exhausted. Even saying that can allow you to sleep. By the way, I genuinely did that, and I genuinely slept for a couple of hours. When the moon was crossing my Chiron, when Sun applies to it. And so on the one hand, you're called into action. On the other hand, there's something about this action that cannot be fully completed because Chiron is still there. And the 2 times Chiron returns is when you are 50 and when you are 100. Okay. So you will make progress. Okay. Right now I live in a house with a yard, a house that is bigger than the house that I was living in, the best location in the city. It's rental. Okay, it's not my property. And of course, there needs to be more room for my gallery, for my pictures, for many things. But Rahu calls you to do something, and with Rahu, there can be disillusionment because your soul has not been there. So you're like, oh my gosh, this place must be so wonderful, and then you get to that place, and it's another place. Okay, it has its pros, it has its cons, but you can be disillusioned. Let's say you never had a relationship. Rahu matures, you have a relationship. There's like this constant dedication that I need to put into this relationship to preserve this relationship. It's constant tending to. It says, yes, this is a relationship. This is a relationship. Okay? You're growing something and you're tending to it. And you can say, oh, I thought I will be, I will get married and everything will be fine. Or I will get into this job and everything will be fine. You have other parts in your life, okay? Some things are fine, some things. But at the same time, if your soul has not been there and your soul is heading there, then it's one of the things you need to do. You can see it as a duty, or you can see it as a place where you long for, you're aspiring to. When I was in between houses, I was channeling, and he gave me this Sedona. And I kind of began to feel like this Sedona thingy that I was receiving was more like the promised land. And eventually the village that I live is kind of like a Sedona in Israel, but it was more like the promised land, because there's this journey to the promised land. When you get there, you still have to work, you still have to make ends meet, you still have to this, you still have to that, but it's kind of like, but you know that you need to be there. Kind of like a Saturn return. Okay, Saturn return. When I was beginning my first degree was only in Saturn return. I tried when I was in my 20s, very young. I tried very young, but exceptionally young for my country, but there was no money. Now I'm Me Too veteran, and I was studying filmmaking. One of the people that I was studying, that I was volunteering, I was going free listener to their classes. Later we found out in the Me Too era that he was a sex offender. He's a very famous Israeli director, and he was sex offender. Okay, I was sitting in him looking into the whites of our eyes. We're only a few students in this filmmaking class, okay, this filmmaking workshops, getting especially to hear from the people in the industry. Yeah, so I did not finish my first degree in my 20s. I was Me Too veteran in my 30s. Okay, for politics and governments. And yeah, there's just a story. The rest is history, or her story, or their story. But the thing is, when I got the funding to study my first degree, it was Saturn return. It was not that it was easy. My roommate was looking at me. I was studying politics and governance and English linguistics. She said she was studying biotechnology, some medical technology, something like that. Biomedical technology. And she says, I'm looking at you. I never believed. I thought you were studying grass science. I never believed you work so hard. I could never do this. Reading Hobbes and all these theories and this, and then, for linguistics, lots of readings, lots of exercise. And she said, oh my gosh, I never believed it. I don't understand. I could never ever do this. I looked at her, I said, I could never ever do this, mathematics that you do. I have dyscalculia. Would never do that, Can understand an equation if I understand the theory behind it, but it's not how you do mathematics. You're supposed to derive from the equation the theory. And I just derive the theory, from getting things. And then I can tell you, okay, you have this here is supposed to be gravity, this cannot be this, and this is supposed to be like this. And it's like, yeah, but it's like, how do you know it? First of all, second of all, yes, you're right, but you're supposed to compute it. It's like, I have this calculation, this numbering I can do. But at this time, my freshman, I was with one window looking at things that I will save from you because I don't want the triggers, and at another window writing my essays. It was not ideal, but I was called to do this, and I was whole with this decision because that was something that I could live with. At the time, Saturn was was returning, and I was called to do. It is in my 9th house, so I finished an entire degree and then went directly to the second one. Okay. With Rahu, you can feel it's not Saturn. Saturn is calling you from responsibility, dedication, blah, blah, blah. Rahu, you desire to be a mega millionaire. No one in the world could convince you that you need to be anything else. You begin to rationalize it, you begin to act towards it. Or if it's in your 7th, you want to meet the one. If it's in your 5th, I had a student, I didn't look at the chart, I had a student, was an English tutor, and she was manifesting. I gave her an essay to write about something that she liked so much. She was manifesting her children. Okay, she was maybe 14 years old. Okay, she was manifesting her children. Yeah, I would not surprised if would be surprised if she has Rahu in her fifth. She knows she will do this at a very young age. Okay. I don't know where is Beyonce's Rahu, but she knew that she will be going there. Okay. And there are some premonitions that you get. If I look at my Rahu, I have Rahu in the fourth house with the ruler in the second. So it's owning of an estate. Second is property. So having business, having ownership, or building a home in my own hands. Okay. With me, all of these things are possible. I say something, I will never do that, and then I go ahead and do that. So you never know. But the thing is, ever since I was very young, not only was I imagining houses, but also we were working class, okay? And when I would look at people, very wealthy people, I would not look at them with jealousy. I would look at them with interest to say, okay, let's see, how do these people think? How do these people see life? And I would try to get into the minds of how it is to be this wealthy person. Okay, and that included a lot of naivety. But it's also, even today, if I look at people that are like filthy rich, then my observation would be, okay, this is their upbringing. If Elon Musk grew up the sons of people who had mines in Africa, but he suffered in his childhood, he was psychologically, it's not saying necessarily, like, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'm not saying abused because I don't know, but he said he had very difficult childhood, okay? He didn't feel safe. He didn't feel like he didn't have a childhood, okay? So yes, he had all this big money, but he worked so hard, and so his employees, he makes them work like 20 hours, these crazy hours. We can't really be productive. Okay, he was running away from something into work, and then work was play. But his employees are not like that, and so he was working like madman, and escaping trauma by work, and in a big interesting dissonance. He wants to grow families, big families. So he thinks that it's important to have a lot of children. I was like, but he has suffered in his family. So, like, why? There are things you just don't know. There's just things that you look at. But if I was thinking, oh, I'm working class and he has a lot of money, I should hate him. No, he is a person. I am a person. Probably he makes a lot of big mistakes. Probably if I was in his place, I would make a lot of big mistakes too. How can I look at what is mistakes people are making and see how can I do better, hopefully, and what things they are doing right? But unfortunately, I see a lot of corruption. So you do have these premonitions, you do have this, your soul is going somewhere. So you feel like that place is almost familiar. It's not something that I can explain to you. But you know this in your Rahu section. If you have, let's say, Rahu in the fifth, you're manifesting your children, you know your children, how they will look like, what they will be like, you know this. Okay? If you have Rahu in your seventh, you know what your ideal relationship is, maybe, or maybe not. You know what you want in a boyfriend, in a girlfriend, in a husband, in a wife. Or maybe a different type of relationship, okay, non-monogamous or whatever. In the 10, you know what position you want to be, in a good position in life. And you imagine that, and you manifest it, and you work hard for that. So there is this familiarity and almost premonition feeling, but there can also be disillusionment, because this is like when I was in between houses, was the Sedona, get to Sedona. And this was like the promised land. Okay, the journey to the promised land, the journey to Rose, the journey to the promised land is a journey that needs to be done. And this was why I was getting this Sedona. I don't know if I'll live in Sedona. It doesn't matter. It's on my Mercury-Pluto line. So it's a good place for me for housing, for partnership, for this, for that. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a journey that I came here to do, and the things that are a part of this journey. Okay? Some of them are fated, some of them are not, but there's the merit of that journey and the merit of getting there. Yes, getting there is important. So Rahu is a bit of a pilgrimage. Getting to have these millions, getting to have this, it's important. There's a life experience in this, whether it's disillusion or whether it's, oh, it's that great, or this is what it feels like. Yes, it's important. With Chiron co-present there, there's a wound around doing a pilgrimage. There's a memory that you remember, and you kind of feel like, but my parents did this, and this is what happened. Nobody says that this will happen to you, but then you can, the illusions that you had as a child, they might not be, so a house made of womb. Actually had a Facebook friend that built a house in the model of a womb. So the entire house is like a big womb, and she built it with her own hands. Here she has, I think, probably she has a cancer, doing some cancer in the fourth. Last year doesn't have cancer in the fourth. So maybe maybe it's a model for something that I will do in my future, I don't know. But actually, I have Mercury in the second, opposite in Pluto. And Pluto is recycling stuff, and I was thinking to collect bottles, used bottles, plastic bottles, and build like a warm house for the plants. That one can also sleep in, like a winter shelter or something like that. This kind of like dodging the regulations, but also like a genuine warm house. Maybe I'll grow roses there. And those kind of things are like something that you build with your hands, and bottles and recycled stuff is Pluto related. So there is this integration of things. However, Chiron puts a wound around this journey. As you are tending to this, it stirs up things in you. When you feel you're making progress, you like it, and then something happens, or there's something that comes up, and you're constantly dredged up emotions come to rise. And the same thing with eclipses. If eclipse is triggering your Chiron, eclipse calls for rejuvenation, but Chiron can only allow so much rejuvenation unless you are 50 or 100. Outer planet, the same. An outer planet calls for emphasis. Uranus, you're asked to revolutionize something. Neptune, you're asked to allow the journey of disintegration and reintegration of the psyche. You're asked to allow yourself to be illusional and delusional, and to allow for some letdowns to take place. Okay? Annoying, but it's a part of life. You have to make space for longing, and you also have to allow for the eternal to not be at your fingertips, but you're gonna feel like the eternal is at your fingertips. So you get people addicted, yes, grief, longing, loss, but also tremendous artistic expression and so on and so forth. Pluto, you're composting something. You're called in to compost something. Okay? With Chiron, you can compost a lot. It's not going to be the entirety of the thing. Or if it coincides with the return of Chiron, then it can coincide. But if it does not coincide, if for the entire outer planet journey, Chiron does not return yet, you're not 50 yet, you're not 100 yet, then you go through a tremendous revolution, and there's still more to go. Okay, there's still more to tend to. This can be tremendously exasperating. Utterings like, I don't know why I haven't died yet, which is very Chironic, can be uttered, so there's trigger warning with that. But there is also an invitation to see what you did manage to do. And the fact that you're climbing a 50 years long journey of a hill, and take the time to look at the view, look at the flowers, look at the birds, and understand that it is that long of a journey. It's that long of a journey, okay? Your friend here has Chiron in the 4th house, or housing, family, and the ruler, Mercury, is also ruling the 7th in the 2nd. So marriage, partnership, one-to-one relationships. Chiron will be affecting both. The ruler is the same ruler. Okay, I made this episode about what does it mean that a planet is ruling 2 signs when we talk about our charts. So, and I will be having Uranus in 2025, 2026 entering Gemini. It's like there's just no way to go about it. Either I'm going to be, 52 and a happy single woman who is whole with her life of being single, or you're going to hear about me at 51, 52. It's like, oh, suddenly she married, and she married happily, and they made a house out of compost, and they fired a fireplace from their own poop. They do in Germany, so it's Mercury, Pluto, and they learn to live with that in a way that now they're a happy couple or more. I don't know. And at 50 they married. At 51 they married. At 52 they built a house. Now they did not have land. They did not have land. Now they settled on this land. They made house for the ravens, then house for the roses, then compost toilet, and then they settled down, and they were left to just live in this land because they were too exhausting for any government or non-governmental organization or individual to deal with. And so that sustainability they sustained. Okay, that could be my one of my stories. Like I added, it's like, oh, there's this woman living in a house that she made out of soil with composted fruits growing on it, some vegetation, and she lives in the mountain next to a river, and she's all alone, but she's very happy with her life. Or it can be there's this crazy couple that made an energy infrastructure to light their entire private village out of the cow's poo. Okay, and those are the kind of Mercury Pluto thing. And they found a barren land, and now Aries made it flourish. Okay, I'm living in a desert now, but this desert is getting more and more rain, and things start to grow. And about 100 years ago, it was full with vegetation. So, things are going, but they are going with Chiron. They're not going in. Okay, you get a Rahu return 6 months from now. You're gonna be, with Lada Doncheva, she was married, and then she had a eclipse triggering. I think it was a 7th house. Then she got divorced, got married. Her husband was just divorcing and just married. It was both triggered by eclipses. That was her 3rd marriage. She's still married to this person today, and very happily so. And so blessed to not have these karmic knots with relationship. Okay, so that can be the story of Rahus and eclipses. Eclipse, 6 months. Okay, see, if I would take April 2022, 6 April 2022, I would say 6 months ago, I was escaping a one-room apartment that the other room was I was living with a good friend for 5 years. We lived there and knew each other for another 5 years before that. And I was running around between places and people and countries and trying to find a place to be, as the Nick Drake song goes. And I'm living on a hill, looking at Jordan, the Dead Sea, looking at the mountains. You know, I don't have a property yet. It's tremendously frightening. The village can be getting orthodox, but I'm possibilionist and my weird gender, you know. So there's a lot of frightening things, like it's not the end of the story. And Uranus is about to, you know, Sedna just ingressed, and Uranus is about, these will be ingressing, and Rahu maturation. So it's like, it's not anywhere near the end of the story of housing for me. But I definitely, you know, the eclipse part of it was like, that, if you would catch me at April 6th, like 6 months ago, I was living in my one student apartment, thinking, okay, maybe I need just one more room so I have a clinic and I can, as a aromatherapist, receive people and make blends for them. But things turned so weird. So this is eclipses, but Chiron, when Chiron does mature, certain doors open up. You have, it's beyond the revelation. You are available. You know, one of the stories I was telling in the other video that I hadn't published yet, I had a friend that was helping people or trying to help people all her life. And she had a therapist that would criticize her for her choices. She talks about this publicly, so it's no privacy problem. So I want to tell this story because she discovered open dialogue approach at age 50. So Chiron returned. She was chronically suicidal with her previous therapist, who would criticize her choices. And she wanted to be later with my therapist, that they don't know what energy person, okay, this life-risking person who said you are not safe here, not safe anywhere, and nobody will. Pretty, he was being Amber Heard, was like, nobody will believe you, right? They don't know it's energy. So a clinical psychologist. So if you are looking for to try to make it like, because he's not trained, because he's charlatan, no. Don't be racist. Don't be racist. The entire standardization of the medical field was a racist procedure, way more than it was a scientific endeavor. And I'm not saying that there were no scientific streams. I'm just saying that the decisions themselves were made on a racist bias way more than on any epistemic standards for empiricism that you could hold. If you look at the prevalent epistemics or prevalent methods for a medical profession, some of it is changing, but mainly you're talking about double randomized control test, which is evidence-based medicine. The name is so misleading because it just talks about correlation, does not attempt to do theorizing, does not attempt to understand how a system works holistically, does not attempt to do any of that. It's not bad, okay? It's the lesser evil. It's good that we have that, but basically it's not anywhere near scientific, and there is no reason to say that this is more scientific than to have a person channeling a certain theory around how the body works. There's this energy, there's that energy, there's these energy centers, and people receiving certain improvement on the basis of that. It's just racism. It's no sign, like there are various epistemics and there are various faculties of mind and there are various branches of philosophy of science. It's not all logic and numbers. And whoever studied logic and genuinely studied logic knows it's a lot more intricate than it looks like. Anyway, back to our topic, okay? Well, my friend, when she discovered open dialogue, she had at 50 years of age, the first night, almost full night of sleep. Okay, 50 years of age. The survivor of trigger warning, child sexual abuse. Okay. Tremendously difficult case. And then all she got from people who tried to treat her is that this is the most difficult case that so they told her she's the most difficult case that they knew of in Israel. Now, of course, most people don't reach help. People go through various of atrocities. Yeah? But for her, it stuck in her mind. She was presenting herself in this way. I am the most difficult case that was ever made, that was ever happened in Israel. And they told her that. So this is the kind of help that she was getting. And then if she would tell this, so other people think that she was being an egomaniac. She was not being egomaniac. She was just, that was what she was told since childhood. And then she discovered open dialogue, which is based on, instead of drugging people up or criticizing their choices, is validating people and understanding, even if you have dissociation or non-volitional, non-dual experience, what people colloquially call psychosis. If non-volitional, non-dual experience, which is what it is, was psychosis, my darling, there is not a single person on the planet of Earth who is not schizophrenic. And believe me, I have met some people that you wouldn't even guess. But this approach is basically based on understanding that your reality is very real. Whatever things you experience, sensations or whatnot, is omens. Okay? They can be either psychic attacks, because you are susceptible, because being embodied is quite difficult when you go through trauma. In general, not even sexual trauma, just trauma is just a disembodying. Trauma, in essence, is a disembodying experience. It's when someone feel frightened for their survival, and from that point, understanding that there are various ways, and it's a patient-based approach on how to work towards embodiment. Now, if you have Rahu in the first house, then my darling, your being in your body is something that you might experience at 50. It doesn't mean that you will have a bad life filled with dissociation. Maybe you're astrally traveling everywhere. Okay, I have Mercury, language, ruling my Chiron. One of the things that happened to me is that my accents are changing, my this, my that. Maybe in 50 I will manage to find a voice that is more stable. But right now I just radically accept the fact that if I think about Lada, then my accent would change and it would look like a caricature. But this is a part of it, is non-volitional. If I think about, Austin, then you already know the energy if you're watching. The Feynman, you know the energy if you're watching. When I did the episode of the Freeze, completely changed my entire energy. And it's non-volitional. It's, I call this half channeling. And this is Chiron. It's in the sign of language that is Mercury. It's Gemini. And this is part of the facets. And my Mercury is trining Neptune. So there's an extra path of something that I just surrender to regarding my speech and my mannerisms. But for you, let's see if it's in the first house, then being in the body, you might be astrally traveling. You might be excessively daydreaming. You might be dissociating. Or you might feel that you're not on your path, or you think you're on your path, but this is not your path, and so on and so forth. Those things can happen. Okay, those things can happen. A ninth house can be worldview. So Chiron there means that having a worldview that you can say, this is what I believe, this is what I hold as true, oh, what I have a high degree of faith in, this is my religion, this is my philosophy, is something that maybe you will experience at the age of 50. Or at the age of 50, you will be radically accepting that you just don't have it. Radical acceptance is also a form of chironic healing. 11th house. Here is just something, you may have social anxiety. Okay? And then you have eclipses with Rahu there, and then you have an outer planet going there, and you're like, but it's still not working. It's Chiron. So I hope this episode was useful. And again, just like I said in my previous episode when I tackled Rahu, and when I tackled Chiron co-presenting with Rahu or co-presenting with an outer planet in transition, please, if you listen to any of this and get this sinking feeling in the stomach, it's not for you. It's not, whether it's true or not, it's like right now this is not the truth for you. So many things can change until you are 50. I don't know how old you are, or definitely until you are 100. So many things can change. The world can change. I just saw a video by Gracia Tassio. She uploaded another video about karma. And she did a video 2 years ago, and she brought the teachings of, I don't remember his name, is a Bulgarian teacher, a guru that lived, and even Africans were learning from him. And he believed that we are our charts, and this is what we are born with, and maybe 1 in 1,000 people have the ability to change their chart, and people are going by this. And now, as she's learned in the past 2 years, she's learned teachings that more and more people are getting the access to change their chart. So whether it's by astrological magic, whether it's by remediation, or various techniques, it's so just 2 years. Just 2 years. Okay, so she had one teaching, and now she has a completely other teaching. And Krasi is a traditional, she's a sidereal astrologer, a Babylonian astrologer. So she's a very traditional astrologer. She has a very traditional school based. Okay, it's not modern astrology, it's not New Age astrology, it's not solar astrology or the Pluto Sol, Pluto Leo generation. Okay, and yet she's coming up with this new teaching around karma and the opening gates for more people to change their charts. If you get a sinking feeling in the body, it's probably not the right teaching for you. Okay, I'm just not relevant to you, which is okay. But if you get this, if you read this and you feel this validation, you feel relief, you feel at ease, you feel that maybe like something sits. Something sits with you, and now you get it, and now you're like, okay, I get it now. I get it. I know more of what to expect. I'm less concerned about this topic than I used to be. Then this is a good teaching for you, at least for now. Okay, and I was saying that with any one of my timeless teaching episodes that is more, dealing with the psychology or the depth or the evolution or all that, there is no one teaching for all. If you feel this and you say, oh, this is something in my soul, this is something physically for me, this is something spiritually for me, this gives me a moment of relief and acknowledgement and acceptance and validation in its life, yes, this is good for you. If you get this sinking feeling in the stomach, this contraction, this anxiety, when you hear this episode, at least set it aside. I'm not saying trash it, but at least set it aside, because it's very likely that it's not the right teaching at the right time for the right person. It doesn't mean that you won't look at it from another point of view in so and so years. It can also mean it's going to be completely meaningless to you, and there's going to be a more relevant teaching by the time that you are 50 or you are 100. Okay? So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. You can subscribe to me if you like You can watch a couple of my videos, and if you like the type of content, you can subscribe. If you wonder about readings, then no, I am not currently offering readings. I can only deal with something that I can publicly speak about. That does not include a one-to-one reading at this point in time. So, so that's why my books are not open. It's not that I don't like giving readings. It's not that I'm a snob. It's just that I'm highly unappointable, and I cannot. There's no vacancy for keeping conversation private or keeping conversation secret as you need to do with consultation. So rather than to hurt or betray my patients or my clients, then I choose to close my books and to turn to other meanings of revenue, hopefully. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.